around our advocacy program, bully prevention, EARS, creating healthy schools, whatever work our partner school districts might be doing around social emotional learning. We want to provide the opportunity every month for school districts to have the opportunity to connect, share resources and ideas in the community space, and just really find an online platform to be collaborative and support with overall student success. And then the exciting thing about today's forum is we had Jenny already introduce herself, but we're really excited to have her here today. Generation Schools is very privileged to have the opportunity to work with her and her team around the EARS grant, social emotional learning implementation. We absolutely love working with her, and she has a wealth of knowledge around today's topic, and she's going to share some of her own experiences and resources with all of us today. So we're excited to have her. Just so everyone has a sense of our overall structure around the forums, we'll usually start off with who's on the call. Like we did earlier, we'll have some kind of topic focus, and that might be a shared resource or a guest speaker, and then discussion points throughout. So depending on how many people are joining the forum, we might do breakout groups or just discuss all together as a whole, and then we'll have some kind of wrap up and closing. Zoom norms. So whenever possible, we'll try to use our video, and I'm just realizing none of us are on video. But whenever you can, oh, I think we just had Adriana join us. Welcome, Adriana. And I'm actually going to turn on my video right now. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So yeah, whenever possible, if you're driving or you're elsewhere, please don't worry about being on video, but if you are able to, we'd love to see everyone. And you'll notice that when you join the meetings, we had to send out a new link today, but usually you'll be automatically muted. And so to unmute yourself, you can hold down the space bar or just hover over your screen and click the button to do that. We highly encourage active participation, so feel free whenever during our forums to join in and ask a question or express a comment, whatever you prefer. And then we also have the chat box as well for that. Okay, and then really quickly before we join in, Adriana, do you mind introducing yourself to the group and your role?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'm kind of running late.
No,
my name is Adriana Carrasco, and I am an advocate at a Wiggins school district, K-12.
Awesome. Thanks, Adriana. So today's forum topic is around community referrals. And during each of our forums, we really like to focus in on a goal from our advocacy program. So you'll see here that we have 5 key goals within our advocacy social emotional learning program. And so the previous forums, we've focused on the topic of developing and maintaining relationships. We just recently had a 2-part series on goal setting and monitoring progress. And today we're going to dive into the topic of community referrals. So I'm just going to briefly pull up, we have a document around our advocacy program and some of the research and the why behind it. And so I just wanted to quickly scroll through this with everyone. And you have this document available to you, and you're welcome to use it at any time. So this kind of goes into the back end research and the 5 different goals. So you'll see the developing and maintaining relationships here, the next one around goal setting and monitoring, and then our current one for today around community referrals. So Anna's going to dive in just a little bit here about the definition of what it is, but we really like to express the importance of the teacher relationship and giving students confidence to ask for help when needed with issues surrounding anything like housing, transportation, food security, and health. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what school districts already have in place, what it looks like to solidify our relationships, and then also to provide you guys with some resources around that. Okay, and then our objectives for today, so defining what community referrals are, to look more into finding community partnerships, what's already available and what do we need, and then what it takes to really create those connections and partnerships and solidify. And then, like I had mentioned before, exploring resources that we have, that we all have access to. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Anna.
Thank you. For purposes of this discussion in the forum, we wanted to make sure that we were defining community resources, because that can look different for everybody depending on the community that you're in and what's already available. But for purposes of this discussion, we are looking at resources and support for your students for personal, physical, emotional, social, psychological needs.
Mm-hmm.
And the main goal, especially for those of us on the call who are working directly with students, who are coaches, who are advocates, it's our job to go in there, as noted, to remove the barriers for our students so they can be successful at school and with other challenges they might be facing. On here, for examples, we listed two, that one's from Centennial BOCES and one's from San Luis Valley. These are just examples of what a resource guide might look like. And then later in our forum, we want to talk about how do we take these resources, ones that we've created or ones that are already available, and go beyond what's available here and actually make those connections and partnerships for our students. So I know some of you are in the process of just starting this guide or have pieces. And Adriana, this one, the Centennial one, is one that's available up for you as well. And then we have other slides that show resources that everybody can use. But let's look at the Centennial BOCES first. Okay. So when we hear talk about resource guides, this is a common way that they are organized. So just on here, looking at the top, just counseling, domestic violence, driving, education, all these resources that are going to be available to your students and to your families. We can just scroll through just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know a few of you are in the process of creating this for your own schools. So this is just a document that you can reference. Just has the agency, contact information, hours they might be available, and phone numbers. It's helpful if you can, if we put in the contact person who they can reach out directly, and if there's also someone who speaks their native language, that would also be on there as a direct contact as well. I know it can be a bit intimidating with all the information, but as advocates and coaches, this is our role that we're coming in to help get these resources to everybody. And then we can take a peek at the SLV resource guides. This is one that GSN helped create with the San Luis Valley. And it's just a very similar document. Again, just a table of contents for all of the resources that the students and families might need. This is available in English and Spanish, which you may need to keep in mind when you're creating for your own districts. And also, of course, there's so many other languages put in there. Just keep in mind of the population you're working with. And this is a setup to a very similar format, just a name, the phone number, and how to get to that outreach service. So it depends on what you need and what's available, but the more information that you can provide to your families, obviously the better it will be for them. So again, those were just two resources, just so you had a picture in your mind of what that would look like and what we're focusing on today. Okay. I think one of the first most important starting points as coaches and advocates is to figure out what you already have and to reach out to those that your school is not accessing yet. So if you look at this picture we have right here for our students in the middle, all the surrounding icons are resources that will be available and that we want to make sure that we're accessing. So starting kind of in the bottom right, looking at all the school staff as partners and resources for your students. We have administrators, your educators, parents and families. What resources do they already have and what can they bring in? I think it's equally important to find out where they're working, what they're linked to, services that they already are part of. I'm looking at our volunteers, our community partners, and some districts have the ability to have a community partner coordinator. And if not, think of all the people that you have that you can reach out with, BOCES, or other people in the community that can get resources for your students. So we just wanted to take a minute just to think and then share out what are some resources that your school, your students, your family might use on a regular basis, or contacts that you may have, and then someone that would be helpful for you to reach out to. Adriana, I think you're muted.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, sorry, we lost Adriana for a quick minute. One, I can share one that Adriana is currently working with BOCES. He's right back. That was a quick, quick fix. Adriana, do you want to talk about, you have a connection for your migrant students out at BOCES. That's a big resource for you. Would you like to kind of share how that works?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. My kids just arrived.
No, that's okay.
I was thinking I was on mute and I'm like, sorry about that. So yeah, basically I have a connection with Centennial BOCES. She's an amazing, like she's been in that system for a long time. So every time she has something new, she kind of share it with me. I was hoping that I have something available. Oh yeah. So whatever, like, I don't know if you guys can see it, but Centennial BOCES in Morgan County has this kind of directory. Obviously it's in Spanish.
Wonderful.
So she bring a bunch of these ones for me, and it's basically have whatever is available just on our county. So basically like having her on my side is amazing. So and then if I open it, there's kind of small brochure with all the information that our families may need.
That's great.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. So this is, I think, besides that, is just she bring me this and she tell me names in Morgan County that can help me out as well. So having someone that I can help you, like getting information from, it's amazing. So connections again.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And do you have anyone right there within Wiggins, within the town, or any other resources right there?
At this time, like I'm working on it, but basically I'm referring to like a church. I know there is pantry. I'm sorry, my kids are here. There is, please go out there. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but basically the resources that we have right now, it's churches like for food pantry, or, but other than that, we have to move out to Fort Morgan to get any kind of referrals.
Okay. Which is about 10, 15 minutes away for you, is that correct? Oh, it's okay. And Kristen, do you mind sharing some of the resources that you may currently have already available?
Sure. So up in Westcliff, we've started to collaborate a lot more with Sol Vista, which is a counseling agency, and as well as Family Crisis Services, who have come in and done a presentation to our Sources of Strength group about diversity. So we're hoping to get them back in the school a little bit more too. They also have an advocate that comes and sees kids. As far as my other three schools, it's not, we are pretty minimum on resources. Cotopaxi, I have a plan to reach out to Sol Vista since they're in the Fremont County district, to see if Sol Vista would be willing to come to Cotopaxi as well as Westcliff. As far as Gardner and Levita go, they're kind of more out there, and I'm not as sure. There's Levita probably more so has more resources. Gardner is kind of stuck, so.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It sounds like, oh, so Gardner, I know the kids can reach out to Health Solutions in Walsenburg, I think it's called, but that seems to be not the most reliable. It's so far away.
Yeah. It's something we run into quite a bit with our rural schools.
Yeah.
For our next, that brings us right to our next slide also, for the additional resources. So for the additional resources, these ones right here are a list of ones that can be used all over Colorado. So definitely reaching out to the rural schools also. So just wanted to share them with you just so you are aware. And again, we will share this recording and we can share the PowerPoint so you have all the links. So if you're not familiar, one great resource that a lot of schools, especially rural schools, use is the Colorado 211. So we'll just click on that real quick and show you what it looks like. And so it brings you to all of these free available resources. They are available on crisis mode, like 24/7 for anything. At the bottom of the screen, you can see there's keywords or even your own zip code that you can add in there. But just for the purpose of this, we'll just click on one of them to just show you what it looks like. So here's a mental health and addiction. You can go to yourself or refer your families. I would suggest that you go through and find something specific, but you can pick one area and all of these different connections and resources come up. So it breaks it all down to all the different areas you need. It looks like a lot, which is great. So it might take a little bit to weed out, especially if you're, you know, you can look at different age groups or different demographics. And then I'm going to be clicking on one of them.
Yeah,
so once you click on any of them, it goes into even more detail, and then it brings up a very similar resource guide that we were looking at before. Has a service name, description, where they are located. Just because it's located in Denver doesn't mean they only serve Denver, though. And they talk about the agency, the program, and it gives you more information. So it's just like this extremely long, big resources that you can use. And it's broken down in almost every area you could imagine. And then back on our PowerPoint, just under our link, we left you a how to use the 211 database that you can come back to at a later time. So here's a link to a video to show you how to go through, find the topics, the agency, and just a step-by-step to help you navigate their whole site. But this is a great one, and again, it's free to use. So my advice too, as an advocate, someone who's reaching out, to find like my top 3 or 4 that I would need and look in there, make my connections, and just become comfortable at the site so it's something else you can offer to the students and to the families. Also on here, we have the Denver Public Library. Like anyone on the call is based in Denver, but that is okay. If you go into the library, we just wanted to say Denver because it's one of the largest ones, but most libraries will also give you a community assistance referral page or resource page. This is very similar to the 211. Right here, there's child welfare, domestic violence, health, housing, all the other pieces that might be in there. And again, this is a free resource, and feel free to copy, paste, use the links, or just dig a little deeper and see what's going to fit for your school and your students. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be just for Denver area. There's a lot of resources that stretch all through Colorado. So it's really just kind of taking the time and figuring out those pieces and what else would reach out to your community and the specific needs that you might need. And then on here, we also have another link for, we put in Weld County Human Services. So just another reminder, reaching out to your counties. So every county will have the Human Services Department. And in here you can find even reporting pieces, child welfare, community resources. This is where you can find some help with transportation, with housing, with workforce development, any of these other pieces that you can take and use and kind of run through to see what would best fit the needs. So just keep in mind, just look up your county or even a surrounding county or city, since a lot of us are rural, and even look at the transportation, other things that might be available. And then we have one more. And Jenny, would you like to speak on this one? So the Youth and Family Connections.
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so Youth and Family Connections is, I think it's a little bit more personalized, because what they do is, and they operate out of several counties, but I don't know exactly what they are. Oops, sorry. I know that they operate in Denver, Adams County, and Weld County as well. But what they will do is you can, either school personnel or parents or teachers can make a referral, and they will interview the families either via phone, they'll come out to their location, they'll set up an interview in order to get some more in-depth information about what supports the family might need. And then they essentially act as sort of like a case manager, where they will personalize those referrals for the needs of the family. So instead of families having to search for the resources that they think they need. Youth and Family will interview the families and the students and then try and set them up more directly with the services that they think that the family is in need of. And it sort of takes the step, takes away the step of families having to call several different places in hopes of finding the right thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's great to have that extra support, and also for you advocates and coaches also of getting that support and having that direct link and someone else being able to take that next step and give more personalized resources and support. So it's perfect. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, they also do offer direct services themselves. So not everything is they're referring you to somebody else. They do offer some addiction counseling and youth counseling and family counseling. And then they do quite a bit of restorative work as well.
Great, thank you. And there's, of course, so many other resources that are on here, but we wanted to make sure that everyone had a start and a few links to get familiar with, and some that were used across Colorado. If you have extra ones that you'd like to share also, feel free to add that in chat or email us later, and we can always add that in for everybody. So our next step, piece that sometimes gets overlooked just because everyone has so many responsibilities and so many things to do in the school, we forget. Part that I just want to open for discussion is really understanding what we need. What do our students actually need? What is the process in the school? And what does accountability and follow-up look like in terms of, we refer to the students, how do we know that they're actually accessing resources? And we may or may not know all these answers now, and that's okay, but it is something to keep in mind. So the first one, how do we know what our students actually need? Let's do that piece. So Adriana, do you mind speaking to the part of some of the referrals or how students actually get referred to you currently?
Well, how I get students is from our admin coordinator. Usually we fill up a form, and then they kind of send that information to me by saying this students qualify for your program. By saying this, it may be migrant as well. I'm having that really close relationship with the migrant coordinator in Morgan County. So sometimes I receive it for admin. Sometimes I receive it for friends. Like they know that there's a new family in our district that they may qualify for our services. But actually, yeah, basically it's more for my migrant coordinator friends or admin as well.
Great, thank you. In terms of the accountability and follow up, also, I know that meets with you and also some of the leadership meetings that we're starting over at Wiggins. And follow up and make sure there's a lot of ongoing conversations and community pieces.
Yes.
And then Jenny, did you want to share what it looks like at Weld also?
Yeah, for our program, we do have some qualifying criteria. We're looking at students' daily average attendance rates, and we're looking at the number of behavior referrals that they're getting. Those are sort of our two big markers that we would look at, then assigning them to a student advocate. Obviously, it's voluntary, so when we do get a suggestion for a student that comes our way, then our first step is to reach out to that student and to their family to offer up services within our student advocate program. And then based on assuming that parents and students are on board with that work, then we're really working, our student advocates are working directly with the key stakeholders, teachers, staff members that know the student well, families, to set some goals and then align those goals with support services both in the school and outside the school.
Great, thank you. Kristen, would you like to share? Oh, See a message coming in from Becky as well.
Okay, Becky said, we know that students need based on whether or not they're making steady progress, doing grade level work, regardless of the reason, in parentheses, LD, behavior problems, etc.
Perfect, thank you, Becky. So all of us working with our students every day, we usually have a pretty good idea of the things that they need additional support in or they might be struggling in, but when we're doing the reach out to families, we definitely learn a lot more of the history and of the needs. One thing we wanted to talk about today is actually creating partnerships. So we have all these resources that we gave you, or you are possibly working on your own for your school. One of the big pieces though is creating the actual partnerships and making sure that when we're referring people, they're going to somewhere who understands our school, understands our community, understands our the needs of our students. So on the screen right here, we have listed the 5 C's of successful community partnerships. And so we're gonna go through briefly individually, and then we'll have time to chat at the end also. So the 5 C's, we're definitely the common purpose, complementary content, the communication between ourselves and the partnership, customized partnership, and continuous improvement and sustainability. One thing to note here that cultivating the right relationships is critical to providing these dynamic enrichments. We do know that a great partner can transform a student's education, but a partner that's not the best fit, maybe with your school's culture or process, might end up actually creating more of a struggle than an impact. So just because you have all these resources doesn't always necessarily mean they might be the best fit for your school and your students. So just always keep that in the back of your mind, that we're putting our students and families first, not everything may fit. So our first one that we'll jump into first is our common purpose. So this is just like it sounds. We have the shared set of goals, both by what works for your school and then what also works for the mission and vision of the organization or resource that you are trying to connect them with. One of the most important parts is making sure you have the end goal in terms of what resource you're trying to get for your families, understanding the process of the partners, resource, their timelines, their goals, and what their system is. So our job as advocates and coaches and educators is to be that middle ground and kind of take away that barrier to help families so they don't have to navigate through this process, and making sure that this is a resource that would be most useful and beneficial for them. Yep. Then our next one, the complementary content. So this is when you are looking at all of these resources, really figuring out which ones are best and establishing partnerships that would work best for your students. The partners that we want to look for are the ones that will fill any of your students' unmet needs that you cannot provide at the school. You want them to provide a service, a program, or any other resources that you are not able to provide either by capacity in your own building or resources that you are missing. You want that organization to be able to bring in. And then the big piece about this too is you want to make sure that you have those community partners be able to collaborate with your teachers in school and understand your demographics and where your students and families are coming from. That way it's a complementary resource, not something that you are competing for or that you don't have a connection with. The next one's communication. So Jenny, I'll let you take this piece.
Okay, I think for us, some of the important communication is like getting regular lines of communication set up. Our advocates are part of a broader like school team, and so they meet with their administrators and other support personnel, and usually there's a couple of teacher reps, and they have these support teams that come together at a scheduled time every either week or every couple of weeks. And the purpose of that is then to catch each other up and all get on the same page of what's happening in regards to some of our most at-risk students who often have lots of different people, both in the school and outside the school, working with them. And so it's really a chance for those folks to get on the same page. But if it's not scheduled and part of a sort of a routine, then it can be really difficult to do that well. I'm trying to think of what else to say. So I think that part of systems in place. The other thing that we do is for some of our outside partners like Youth and Family Connections or North Range Behavioral Health, we also set up really clear lines of communication with those outside providers. So whether it's a service that's being provided and it's an email that is just, carbon copied with a case manager within the schools, or whether it's referrals getting copied to me so that I can see who is getting referred and I can communicate that to people who may not be in the loop. I think it's just thinking about all the people involved and what is the best, most efficient way to keep everybody on the same page as much as possible. Email is a great way to do that, even text messages, but also making sure that there's some face-to-face conversations on a regular basis.
Perfect, thank you. I think another piece to add on there too is how much that we ourselves are initiating a lot of that communication and conversation, because a lot of the resources are working with so many other schools also, so it's our job to advocate for our students and put that piece out there. I think in that communication, even if it's like your school newsletters or things that you're doing, anything that's happening at your school, to send out and make those connections and keep your school name and your students and everything up and out in the open, keeps a lot of the contacts, you're in their mind, and they might think of other things that might come available, or if they think, oh, this advocate really wanted this, and they can keep sending things your way. So that piece is huge. And I love what Jenny shared too, of just that internal communication that you have to make sure the kids are getting the services they need. And that's where we go back to the process and the accountability on our part. So thank you, Jenny. Now, next one is our customized partnership. So just on both sides, being flexible and adapting what they're doing at their programs and resources, and also what you're flexible and able to do within your own school. Commitments you can not make in terms of transportation or any other pieces. It's really important that you understand their needs and goals of their organization also, to make sure it fits with what you're looking for, and it also fits with your population and demographics that you're trying to work with. Jenny, do you mind speaking to your student advocates in terms of the partnerships they have with your mental health team?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, our advocates are really integrated and really part of the school teams at each of their buildings. So they don't operate separately from what counselors are doing, what school psychologists are doing, what administrators and teachers are doing. We have student problem solving teams at each of the schools where we have advocates, and they are very much a part of that work. And we also have a district level, what we call district level mental health team that advocates are a part of. So that's about 15 folks that represent K through 12, and they're people in buildings who are helping coordinate different levels of support for students, again, both inside and outside. We have a community directory that we access and update on a regular basis. But I think one of the key pieces to customizing our partnerships is really making those student advocates part of the everyday work that's happening in schools. Otherwise, you just end up operating in these silos, and it's just not as beneficial. The other thing that we did also is we met face-to-face with partners who wanted to come into the building or wanted to come into our community like Youth and Family or North Range, and really had a face-to-face meeting with them about what are the goals of their organization, what are they hoping to bring to our schools, and does that align with what we need as well. We've had lots of outside people sort of reach out and say, we want to look at partnering with you, but it may or may not be a good match. Sometimes those organizations have a different idea of what they want to do, that either we don't need that, or it just, even sometimes the specific people that come to the schools seem to sort of rub people the wrong way. And if that's the case, then that partnership's not super effective because nobody wants to reach out to that individual, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. I think I love that you mentioned that about being a great fit, because it's there, you know, as advocates, we're finding what is a great resource for our students and families. And again, it's not all of them are going to fit, and not all of them are going to fit into your school culture, and you're not going to need all the services that they provide. And it's okay to turn some of those resources down. So just because thinking a school needs everything they can get, that's not always necessarily true. So I love that you added that piece in there, Jenny. Thank you. And our fifth one and last one is a continuous improvement in sustainability. So as you know, it is always going beyond just making that initial contact and partnership, but keeping in mind all the check-ins, the communication, and having plans when things change. So the goals of organizations change. There are leadership position changes, there's staff changes. So always staying in contact and being on top of that piece, so you can have that continuous improvement in your conversations and all the resources that are available to your school and to your students. The next one, so we went through that very quickly, but moving on, so when we do have our resources available and we're making our relationships and partnerships, the introduction, once we get through that door, might be a little easier than it is to maintain. So on here, we put in a quick checklist that can just help you with determining like the relationships, things that work for you. Some places like to have set contracts with different resources and partnerships. So on here, there's a checklist, and it does look a lot at once, especially if resources are new to you. This looks huge. This is not an end-all be-all list by any means, but on here, it's a resource you can go back to, maybe take pieces if you want to. A lot of this would be great for your administrators also, to make sure it's in here of looking at what the partnerships do, what can come into your school, what support they can give to the whole staff besides just families. And as you're making your list, you might want to reference this and pick 2 or 3 things off here that you think are the most important and work on adding that into your own resource list. And again, a lot of this is really big topics, a lot of big things with contracts, agreements, all of those. I think in terms of the people that are on the call, we want to just get to what is a program, what can you do to help my kids and families. So, but this checklist is here for you just to go through and strengthen the resources or the resource list that you might already have. So feel free to take it or leave it, or just use it as a guide for yourself. And on this last part, we'll have Ellen share some of these additional documents and resources that you also have available in addition to what we shared at the beginning.
Awesome. So there was a couple questions about how to access these documents. And so I just wanted to actually quickly go through with everyone where we're housing all of our resources, our recordings from the forums, and then also our PowerPoints. So I'm going to post in the chat. I just added a link. Does everyone see that? It's selforum.ning.com. So if you click onto that link, it should take you to what's currently on my browser. And you'll see here that we have a couple of different tabs. We have a ton of different articles around social emotional learning. If you click on the SEL forum tab, that's actually where we're housing all of the articles that Anna has discussed, that Jenny has mentioned. And you'll see here at the top, we've listed all of the forums that have already taken place. And so forum number 5, so from today, we've already had Kat she is the Ning guru. She's uploaded a lot of the resources already that we've been talking about today. So they're all just hyperlinked here, and they should pull up any of those Word docs or PDFs for you. As soon as this recording is completed, we'll upload the recording as well as the PowerPoint. So you can see from the previous forum here that you can click on the PowerPoint link right here. We'll take you to the PDF. And then you can also directly click, it's a YouTube link to the recording from the previous forum. Any questions about that, about how to access the resources? Okay, awesome. We have a couple more minutes. Just a few things for logistics. We have a feedback survey that's hyperlinked in the PowerPoint, and something that we also send out in our follow-up e-blasts. If you ever have feedback about the forums or topics that you want to hear from the GSN team, then please let us know. We'll make sure to cover those in some of the upcoming forums. We mentioned the Ning platform. It might direct you to create your own account if you have not already done so. So feel free to do that to access all of our resources. Our next meeting date, if you want to mark your calendar, is March 24th from 3 to 4 p.m. We'll also send out a calendar invite for that. And the topic will be still around the 3rd advocacy goal, but we're now going to do more of a focus on the parent engagement piece. Okay, and then here's our contact info. I also have Jenny's info as well if you guys have any questions for her about some of the things that she talked about today. Okay, that's all we have for you unless anyone else has any other questions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. Have a great afternoon.